Thanks for watching On Point. Let's take a look at your market news now. Asian markets tumbled today as fears mounted around trade tensions between the US and China. China is threatening to hit the US's energy sector by whacking import tariffs on US oil imports. As risk aversion rose, investors piled into the Japanese yen, causing the currency to firm. The Nikkei share average dropped to 0.8%. Other regional markets, including Australia and Thailand, were down. Both Hong Kong and China were closed for public holiday. US stocks ended down last Friday, this on worries over an escalating trade dispute between the United States and China. However, the indexes closed well off the day's lows. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.34%. The S&P 500 lost 0.1%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite Index slid 0.2%. Now for more on the markets, we cross to the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Arabile Gumedo is standing by. Good afternoon, Arabile. What happened with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange this morning?
Well, it seems 2 hours of mistrade certainly did come about earlier this morning. We've only had about 2 hours and 23 odd minutes of trade today. It seems technical issues seem to be at the fore, but of course many now fearing a few issues that have come up in recent time. Of course, cyber hacking being one of those as well. But the JSE, of course, saying that no, it is indeed just a technical glitch that they had incurred, and trade then having only started at 11, so 2 hours of mistrade at that point as well. Interestingly enough, not much momentum coming out of the Asian stocks. Of course, having seen a lot of those markets closed as well heading into today, but the JSE today is down this afternoon. Whether it ends down will certainly be a key figure and a key question. Of course, the big stocks to look out for, PPC, the likes of Liberty as well, and just what is happening with Mercantile Bank and how significant could that be. We'll chat about all of that, but for now, let's take a look at how the European and local markets are faring. Well, taking a look as well at your Bitcoin, $6,425 just for one Bitcoin, 89,427 as well. That's down 0.75% today. Bright Kumalo, Portfolio Manager at Vestec, joining us today. Bright, thank you so much for joining us. It's a negative one, but I think we should just go right into that Liberty story. How big of a deal do you think it is, not just for that company, but I think shockwaves across many companies that look at their cyber security and think we need to up our game here?
Of course, I mean it's a big concern for especially investors who've got their personal details, their FICA documents somewhere they're locked up, and all this information could get lost. I mean, we've seen a flurry of these big companies getting hacked last year, and unfortunately it had to happen to one of the biggest South African insurance operators, Liberty, here today. And we saw the share price was down about 6% on the news, and management did confirm that it's actually the South African insurance operation, so it's not across the board, and I'm sure they're handling it with due care in the interim.
One will certainly worry across the long term, however, as to how other companies are preparing themselves for these things. Cybercrime is not just something that you can prepare yourself for once. It's probably something you have to keep updating, and,
yes.
the spend on it is going to be quite critical from here on too.
Of course, and the lovely thing about these newer, smaller companies that grow up in the digital age, they actually get those controls and those financial controls actually up front, so they get the benefit of actually doing the right thing first, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the companies, sort of your older generation companies like Liberty, they have to sort of using their current systems find ways to make sure that they actually try to counteract what might happen out there, which is very different as compared to a business that grows up knowing that we have to keep our firewall strong and our internal securities or website, everything in top tip shape.
Yeah, it's a big ship, and of course to steer it in a different direction is going to take some time.
Yes,
4.91% down at present for Liberty. we'll see how that fares. Another interesting stock will be PPC. Their earnings coming out today. It seems too good to be true. It seems absolutely great. 114% increase in headline earnings per share. Should we should we be reading as much into that?
No, look at the revenue number for now. The headline earnings per number obviously is coming off a very low base. I mean, they turn profits and all that. So obviously the headlines is going to look very big compared to where they're coming from. But you look at the revenues, 10.3 billion, up 7%. The number for me that, caught my attention is the 2.3 billion rands, an increase of 23% of their cash position.
Yeah.
This is very impressive because not so long ago, we remember that the PIC had to come in and, lend a hand to PPC in terms of, cash injection there. And you look at the numbers, they seem to be coming well. The margins are strong in their current business. Even the DRC business is not doing so bad, even though they had to write down about 165 million rands worth of the plant there in the DRC. But going forward, it seems like they're in the right space. But unfortunately, the sad thing is that it's a very competitive space. We know Dangote cement plays there, and in South Africa they sell through Sepaku and directly as Dangote, and those guys they basically compete on price. So their strategy is very simple. They come into the market, lower the price of cement for a very long time, and you see the likes of PPC actually took a hit as a result. And a lot of smaller businesses actually get wiped out of the market.
0.5% lower today. Do you think that is purely based, and I'm asking for a very short answer, do you think that's purely based on the fact that a lot of their income and a lot of how they did better was not based on South Africa, but mainly based on their African operations?
Well, I think actually they're positive if you look at them relative to the market today, because the market is down about 1.2%, 1.1%. They're down 0.5%, like you're saying. So I wouldn't read too much into that.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, of course, that takeover having not happened earlier as well, is quite critical to how their operations run. But one that really is of keen interest, Mercantile Bank, Capitec, Nedbank and the PIC seemingly being on the short list to take that one up.
Of course, but the interesting thing there is that there's actually 18 companies that are runner-ups to actually buy those assets. So it's not just those top three that you're talking about, but I'm sure those top three, since everyone's focusing on them, maybe they're the favorites, maybe there's some insight there. This is very interesting because Mercantile Bank is owned by an offshore company, an offshore bank that's a state bank in that country. I think it's Portugal, if I'm correct. And what's interesting there is that this company basically lends to small entrepreneurial firms. So they play in the same space as some of our South African smaller banks. So it'll be good to see, who actually wins the bid here.
That will be, I think, one to watch out for, and we'll certainly look out for it, and hopefully we'll have a chat around that. But for the rest of the week, the big focal point that you may be looking at, we had a very busy week last week. Everything from Fed to, of course, Donald Trump and, Kim Jong-un.
Yes.
This week, perhaps a little more sedated.
Well, we're still looking at those inflation numbers locally in South Africa. We hope inflation isn't picking up on a month-to-month basis. But what's more important is the current account numbers that are going to be coming out. I think it's Friday. We're going to be watching those very closely. Yeah,
that comes out on Thursday actually as well. So we'll certainly look out for that one too. Bright Kumalo, Portfolio Manager at Vestec, thank you so much for the time. Interesting week, as he said. Of course, current account data expected out on Thursday. Is CPI, inflation numbers coming out on Wednesday. And Friday also is Naspers. So that will be an interesting discussion to just see where that tech giant is going. Certainly, of course, their Tencent business is one of key focus. PPC, Liberty, still things to look out for and probably will reverberate throughout the week. I'll hopefully get a chat with Johan Claassen, the CEO of PPC, right after this.